delighted to be back at the old bakery, which I associate with gin. But today the subject is whiskey. Ian, before we talk about whiskey, you were making gin. How did that go?
The gin went really well, obviously all thanks to you, Michael, and your guest appearance in helping us. But no, it has, all joking apart, gone really, really well. It's an incredibly saturated market, so there's over 4,500 plus gins, approximately 2 new gins a day popping up, and I kid you not, official figures. So it's a really, really crowded market, or crowded pond. So what we've tried to do is keep it as upmarket as we possibly can. We're still very small, it's still a tiny batch. We've supplied Buckingham Palace, we've supplied the Foreign Office, we're in talks with them about getting it into every British embassy because it's such a British story. It's not about the gin, it's about the history of this place. There were never any plans to get involved with whiskey at all, and the reality is, very little about whiskey. But when we've been doing gin shows, people, customers have said, have you thought about an English whiskey? Well, we didn't know anything about gin, as you probably know, as well. And then we thought, well, if we are going to do something with whiskey, and it played at the back of my mind, because the gin heritage that we've got is just phenomenal, it's just awesome. There isn't any whiskey heritage here. I didn't want to create one or make one up or any of that kind of nonsense. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do something, let's make it special. And our first legal customer was Jerry's of Soho. Alan, who's the main man there, supported us from day one. I don't mean just supported us by buying our product and selling it, but more importantly, his advice was fantastic, absolutely spot on. When we weren't sure what we should do, how we should do it, I'd address Alan, and Alan gave us great advice. So this really, there's a picture of Alan on there, and this is our thank you, this is our tribute to Alan.
And Alan's photograph appears on the bottle.
It is, and do you know what? When he got his first order, that's the first time he saw his picture on there. He hadn't approved it, he hadn't seen it. So that's been really good, it's been really kind to us. And it's been a great journey and lots of fun, so we've been very fortunate.
What did you learn from your gin experience that you're applying to the whiskey?
So going from zero and not knowing anything about it and sort of developing a tiny little brand from nothing, what did I learn from that and how did I apply it to our whiskey? Firstly, people like to buy local. People like to buy and support local businesses. So we're not calling our whiskey, for example, an English whiskey, we're calling it a London whiskey. We could be more specific and call it a North London whiskey or an Enfield whiskey, but I don't think that would be appropriate. A London whiskey is fine, it's the city on the planet, as we both know. We both live here. And so we're both, we're really supporting London in as much as it becomes a London whiskey rather than an English whiskey. It's got a really nice, super smooth flavour, and there's some here if you'd like to try it, Michael.
I would indeed. Well, so what flavour have you been aiming for? What characteristics? Actually, why don't you pour it and then you can be telling me as I'm sampling it. So what is whiskey?
So whiskey is a neutral grain spirit laid in a cask. We've used a New American oak cask, and it has to be in the cask for a minimum of 3 years. It's not oaked at all. There's no smoky flavour. There's no peaty flavour. It's not peated at all. It is. I'll let you try it and tell me what you think. I can think of some very large brands that it's very similar to.
Well, I'm absolutely an expert, but to begin with, it smells like many a lovely whiskey that I've drunk in my time.
Nice and light, isn't it?
Cool. And beautifully smooth. It absolutely rolls across the tongue. Well done.
And it's a gentle oak on the finish, but it's very, very subtle. It's not overpowering at all.
Just about the right amount of warmth as it goes down.
Cheers.
Well done.
Thank you, Michael. We're outside the legendary Jerry's of Soho. We're going to go and meet Alan, the manager, and we're also going to meet Colin Dunn, who's the whiskey ambassador or whiskey guru for Diageo. I think he looks after 170, 180 whiskey brands, and we're going to talk about the growth of English whiskey. We're here at the famous Jerry's of Soho. Alan, is it actually called Jerry's of Soho? Because that's what I call it.
Jerry's Wines and Spirits. You call
Jerry's
it
Wines and
Spirits. Call it whatever you want.
Well, when we launched our Old Bakery Gin, Alan has been a perfect sounding board, helped us from day one, assisted us with fantastic advice, and from that, obviously, our gin brand has grown, and that's largely.
Well, to be honest, when you came to fit my boiler, I didn't tell you how to do that. But when you talk about drinks, you needed a helping hand.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And as we've known you for so many years, as one of our customers, and a good friend, why wouldn't we help you?
Yeah, well, that was appreciated. That's the whole point of our whiskey. So when we launched our whiskey, we wanted a good excuse to launch it rather than just say we've made a whiskey. So because of that, Alan's face is on our whiskey. It's a tribute to Alan to say thank you from us, the plumbers. And we have Colin. And Colin, you introduce yourself.
Well, I'm very lucky to know this gentleman. My name is Colin Dunn. For my sins, I'm called a whiskey ambassador. And I look after around about 170, 180 different expressions of whiskey for a company called Diageo. And I met this young man at many a whiskey festival, and we've stayed friends ever since. And I've watched with complete interest the growth of how something so small with a recipe that became a gin that was sold in bars and clubs and restaurants around the UK. But he's gone and taken it a step further.
So the whole purpose of being at Jerry's today is for these guys to talk, and not me, and really to talk about the growth of English whiskey. Over to you, Alan. How would you describe the growth?
Do you know what? The thing that's always surprised me about English whiskey, Colin, hopefully you can answer this, is for years and years I've been selling Scotch whiskey, and unless it said it was 8 years or 10 years, I was not interested. Because my customers wanted, if they want a single malt, they want it 8 years, they want it 10 years, they want it 12 years. The older the better. English whiskey now has been coming along for the last 5-6 years. I mean, it's been going a little bit longer than that, but really the real growth has been the last 4 or 5 years, and we're getting whiskies which are just over the 3-year threshold, and they taste so good. I was thinking, the one thing I was thinking to myself was maybe because they're smaller companies, they don't invest in the big machinery, so it's all sort of handcrafted. I mean, are there any other reasons why the whiskey's so good and so young?
Well, at the end of it, every whiskey that is produced is at the court of public opinion. The public will make their mind up whether they think they like it or they don't. And when it comes down to what's happening in England at the moment, whether you're in Yorkshire with the Spirit of Yorkshire making whiskey, St George's Distillery, even down in my part of the world in Cornwall, you have Cornish whiskey. Now, that doesn't get to say that it's all going to taste absolutely perfect. These are ongoing organic distilleries that are creating new flavours through aging, that in the future, who knows what these will be like in 4, 5, 6 years, but they're hitting the sweet spot at a very young age, and that is the most incredible thing. As you rightly said, Alan, until a few years ago, anything that was young was considered not to be matured enough. In the same vein, I've tasted whiskey up to 50 years old with a big price tag, and the whiskies are over the hill. They've been in the wood too long. Just because it has a 50 on the bottle as a number doesn't mean it's any good. I'm 67. I was much better when I was 23.
That's true.
So there's a changing, there's a change, there's a mood happening in whiskey, and from across the world. And I'm so pleased to see English whiskies in the hands of individuals jumping on that carousel and starting a new journey for new whiskey drinkers.
Yeah, because I mean, lots of everyone's looking for the sweet spot, the new aging, where you're going to age it in, what sort of casks and everything.
Yeah.
And the English guys have done some really interesting stuff. And as I say, with a younger whiskey, I'm just blown away. Obviously, not all of them work. I get that, but the majority, most of the things I've tasted, really, really like.
Can I ask, but why are the younger whiskies hitting that sweet spot so young?
For me, personally, I think the cask is all important. Cask selection with your new make spirit has to be right on the button. I know in my company, it's like the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
If you can have the right spirit and you put it into the wrong casks,
It's over.
good night Irene, it's all
Yeah,
over.
yeah.
So you definitely need, and certain distilleries like Chichibu in Japan, Bimba in North London, Old Bakery, yourself,
Sure.
you have to make sure that you're getting the right cask. It's considered that between 60 and 80% of whiskies maturity get their flavour from the cask. So I think the answer to your question, if I go back 20 years, 30 years, there was no cask selection.
Yeah.
Put it in a barrel, age
See what
it,
happens.
sell it, and it would be like the weather. Some days it would be fantastic, and other days it ain't. There's nothing shaking but the leaves on the trees. But now, choosing the right casks to mature your new make spirit, so it develops quicker, and finally, putting it maybe into a quarter cask, to a smaller cask where there's only 100, 150 litres. Smaller the cask, the faster the maturation.
Yeah, the more contact. And someone did say to me, and I'm not sure what I think about this, but I was talking about Scottish whisky and English whisky. And if you think of American whisky, so bourbon and stuff, you see them, they can be aged for 2 years. Generally they're aged for 3-4 years, and they're ready to go.
Yeah.
And the climate in England is slightly less harsh than it is in Scotland.
Yeah.
So would that have an effect on it?
Quite possibly. I mean, I get asked time and time and time again about what makes whiskies different. And in fact, there's a multitude of answers. It could be down to the fermentation time, it could be down to the distillation time, it could be down to the middle cut, it could be to the kind of grain that you're using, it could be down to the quality of casks, and it could be down to how long it is maturating for. Ultimately, the person who makes the decision is the man or woman who says, I think this is ready for the public. And whether it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc., you have to feel confident of releasing your spirit, your aquavita, eau de vie, ushkava, ushki, whiskey, the water of life, onto the public. You've got to make it sing. You've got to make it come alive. And that's what I think.
One final question for you both. If English whiskies are tasting so good while they're young, is there an opportunity for aging them and making them better? I mean, for us, it's a crystal ball because we just don't know. It's a complete learning curve. Just want to be your thoughts.
That's what Colin was saying. So at the moment, they're at the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're going to be like in 5, 6
3,
years?
8. You just don't know.
I think distilleries have to continue to experiment. These days, I was talking to Alan earlier on about how there are so many different cask finishes. We were talking about wine finishes, Tokai, Claret, Burgundy, etc. Rum. You've got to experiment, I always remember years ago when I was in the cellars with a master blender, and he goes, you see all these casks? There's just a few of these that will hit that sweet spot. We at this stage don't know which ones, and this is what is happening. What will English whiskey be like in 10 years?
Crystal
Nobody
ball.
knows, but all I do know is the people who work there, who are manufacturing, who are bottling, they're maturing it, they have to make the decision when they think it's right for the public.
Yeah, I think when you're at sort of Ian's level, where he's just coming into it, I mean, it's closer to sort of magic than it is science.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question.
I think
Crystal ball territory.
because as you say, you never know till it's done.
I think I would add that it does help if you are able to put some very famous people to the bottle. I mean, I've met this guy a few times, and he's definitely enhancing the reputation.
It's probably not the best photograph I've ever seen myself.
You're on there.
But innovation is alive and well and kicking in North London, and it's going to be reaching your palate anytime soon.
Alan, Colin, thank you very much indeed. Seriously, thank you so much.
No problem. Cheers, everyone.
what's in here, we're just going to release all the water and the mild agent that's been cleaning the barrels.
Very mild cleaning agent, as recommended by the local authority, Food and Hygiene. So, George, are you ready to pull the plug?
Yeah, you ready?
Well, depends how wet you want to get. Go for it. Did you get wet, George?
Not enough.
Good.